from Matt Hams, who is a London-based image maker and filmmaker. He studied BA Illustration and Animation and MA Communication Design here at Kingston University, and he's currently a senior lecturer in the design school where he runs the graphic design pathway on the graduate diploma in creative practice. Over to Matt.
Hey, hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to talk today, and everyone. Kate. Just going to infamously say the words, going to share my screen. Hope this works. I haven't done this for a while, actually, so. Okay. Okay, so Kate and I have been talking about AI for a little while now. And last week, Kate said, Matt, with your talk coming up, what's your title? What are you going to call your presentation? And I sat for about 10 minutes and I just couldn't think of anything. So I thought, let's keep with the theme. Let's ask AI to come up with a title for the presentation. So I typed into Chat GPT or GTP. What's a snappy title for a lecture on the development of AI text to image making that considers the developing role of natural language and visual language? And the Chat GTP came back to me with from text to image, the evolution of AI generation through language. And I thought, that's pretty good. But I'm quite a needy person, so I asked it back. How about text to image, considering language in the rapid development of AI image generation? Is this a good title? And then the AI came back with an error message. And I thought that serves me right, really, to be such a needy person asking AI for justification for my ideas for the text. So anyway, so that's the title of the talk today. So this is the beginning starting points, and this is a version of a talk that I gave with Maisie Noble a few weeks ago. And I don't think Maisie's here. I did send her the text. I don't think she was able to join. But I just wanted to make it clear that this is a collaborative project and it's not just me thinking about these things. I think a lot of people are. Okay, so this is me. I teach across the design school, and prior to coming to Kingston, I was an illustrator for about 10 years. And I was thinking about this the other day, actually, that I graduated in 2006, which was quite a strange, particular time in a juncture of illustration studies, in that it was one of the only points where analog and digital were kind of converging, where I started learning in a purely analog way and came out with quite a digital appreciation. And I've always kind of done things with an analog mind, but kind of producing things in a digital way. So I thought that's quite an interesting thing to be thinking about. And is hello. I asked the AI to produce a little hello message for me here. Okay, so before we begin this talk properly, I just wanted to have a little kind of knowledge check for it and see, like, I don't know how many people are here, but let's have a little think about who has actually heard of text to image AI generation. So I don't know if you can use your phones just to scan this QR code, and I'm going to ask you a little question. So have you heard of AI text to image generation? Yes. Because it's yes, yeah, it looks like it. Good. So when we did this talk a few weeks ago, it was maybe 2/3 had, maybe a third hadn't, and a couple of people kind of didn't really know what we were talking about, but we're interested. So that's good to know. And it's interesting, you'll see in the progress of the presentation that the kind of the language and knowledge about this kind of work has increased in the public consciousness over the last 6 months to 8 months. And it's a funny little timeline to see the progression of people's understanding. Okay, let's get back to the, yeah. So when I was putting together this presentation to begin with, I was going through my mind and thinking about when the first time I sort of came across AI image generation. And I've kind of seen it before. There's quite a famous website called This Person Does Not Exist, which creates new faces that don't exist. And I worked with somebody on a project a little while ago where she scanned, or she put into a GAN machine learning simulator about 100 or so William Morris prints. So she was creating new William Morris prints out of existing ones. But when I came across this, just scrolling through Twitter, I kind of stopped, and it made me kind of really it just jarred me a lot, because what is this? What are we looking at? It's not a photograph. It's not collage. It's not some sort of drawing. Thanos exists in space here. He's at a Walmart looking for his mum. But it's odd, it's strange, it kind of jars with your mind. And yeah, it's something new, something a little bit different. So what exactly is AI text to image generation? So you guys might recognize this kind of image from your phones or from your Photos app on your computer. That AI has become quite good at recognizing, or technicians and computer bots have trained the computers to become quite good at recognizing objects and scenarios and labeling them with text. So it can recognize a person, a ball, or a beach. And it's quite easy for it to do that at the moment. Then it also became quite adept at turning those labels into a kind of natural language. So turning those words, person, beach and ball, into people play with a ball on a beach. But then the clever bots who are working with these ideas kind of thought, can we reverse engineer that? Can we make it so that we can input natural language into a system and then it output an image? And they found that it could. So here's a little teaser video from DALL-E that just explains how exactly these things work.
Have you ever seen a polar bear playing bass? Or a robot painted like a Picasso? Didn't think so. DALL-E 2 is a new AI system from OpenAI that can take simple text descriptions like a koala dunking a basketball and turn them into photorealistic images that have never existed before. DALL-E 2 can also realistically edit and retouch photos. Based on a simple natural language description, it can fill in or replace part of an image with AI-generated imagery that blends seamlessly with the original. It's called inpainting. In January 2021, OpenAI introduced DALL-E, a system that could generate images from text, like this avocado armchair. DALL-E 2 takes the technology even further with higher resolution, greater comprehension, and new capabilities, like inpainting. It can even start with an image as an input and create variations with different angles and styles. DALL-E was created by training a neural network on images and their text descriptions. Through deep learning, it not only understands individual objects, like koala bears and motorcycles, but learns from relationships between objects. And when you ask DALL-E for an image of a koala bear riding a motorcycle, it knows how to create that or anything else with a relationship to another object or action. The DALL-E research has three main outcomes. First, it can help people express themselves visually in ways they may not have been able to before. Second, an AI-generated image can tell us a lot about whether the system understands us or is just repeating what it's been taught. Third, DALL-E helps humans understand how AI systems see and understand our world. This is a critical part of developing AI that's useful and safe. The technology is constantly evolving, and DALL-E 2 has limitations. If it's taught with images that are incorrectly labeled, like a plane labeled car, and a user tries to generate a car, DALL-E may create a plane. It's like talking to a person who learned the wrong word for something. DALL-E can also be limited by gaps in its training. If you type baboon and DALL-E has learned what a baboon is through images and accurate labels, it will generate a lot of great baboons. But if you type howler monkey and it hasn't learned what a howler monkey is, DALL-E will give you its best idea of what it thinks it could be, like a howling monkey. What's exciting about the approach used to train DALL-E is that it can take what it learned from a variety of other labeled images and then apply it to a new image. Given a picture of a monkey, DALL-E can infer what it would look like doing something it's never done before, like paying its taxes while wearing a funny hat. DALL-E is an example of how imaginative humans and clever systems can work together to make new things, amplifying our creative potential.
So that's quite a good explanation of the technology. It's worth noting, though, that that is by DALL-E, who are one of the machine learning companies there. So it's quite a positive viewpoint on that. But what's interesting at this moment in time is how quickly the technology is developing. So I've got two images here, one from 2021, which I guess was 2 years ago now, and one from last year, 2022. And the complexity, the sophistication is really being pushed forward. Resolutions, capabilities, the kind of range of things that are being done with it has kind of stepped on a lot in quite a kind of, might be a little bit scary way, how quickly this is developing. So we've said, Maisie and I, this technology is developing at a fast pace. We're in the middle of a shift in the way that images can be made. The tools available to us are growing, so we feel that we want to have a conversation about this, and this was with students and with you guys as well. I think when I first started thinking about this, I said to Kate, do you know of anybody else who's thinking about AI? And there wasn't really many people in the conversations, but I think just even in those couple of months, it's really moved on. And I know that AI has reached the public consciousness to a certain extent. When I was talking to my dad last week and he brought up Chat GPT, I was like, okay, that's it. That's the tipping point when it becomes ubiquitous. And just scrolling through Twitter yesterday, I saw a big BBC headline that said Google and ChatGPT like are in a kind of space race for prominence at the minute. So here are some examples of some of the AI image generators. The big ones sort of are over on this side. So DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, and Midjourney. There's Imagen by Google, which is in development, which we've seen a little bit of, but Google haven't released it. It's kind of being worked on in the background. And Lensa is one that's kind of associated with Instagram and TikTok and social media. We're going to have a look at Crown a little bit later, but yeah. So this is back in June 2022. After I'd seen the Thanos looking around Walmart for his mum. I was like, I want to see what this is. I kind of go to this kind of technology stuff, and I've always been obsessed with ghosts. As an illustrator, I've drawn ghosts, and I like ghost films. And I've never seen a ghost, but don't know if I'd like to. But if anybody has, we can have a conversation about that later. But I like to see ghosts, and kind of using this technology to find them it kind of freaked me out a little bit. But I liked doing it. So this is one from June 2022. You can see somebody said, "What's that? What are you doing?" It was kind of still not really in the public consciousness, but yeah, just making ghosts. And I was purposefully using the language to make it a little bit lo-fi, a little bit kind of grainy. I think I kind of wrote the prompt as lomography, or kind of a lo-fi film grain kind of thing, to make it not perfect. I kind of want a non-perfect image. And I was just making some strange things. I think I wrote the prompt, portrait of my friend Dan made out of tree bark, just to kind of see what it does, really, just to kind of see what it pops out with. So Maisie and I were having some conversations back and forth about this, and she was doing her own little experiments with DALL-E, and I think she was trying to replicate kind of her drawing style, the way that she works, the visual language that she uses, and it got quite close with what she was doing there. She uses crayons and kind of soft pastels a lot, and these sort of colours. And we were saying, isn't it strange that your work sort of your AI work looks a little bit like the work that you draw? And then she'd had a go at trying to make some of my ghosts, but they were coming out a little bit more friendly, a little bit less kind of sinister, and more kind of fun, a little bit jolly, really. So this was an interesting thing that we were thinking about. This was in June 2022. Oops. And then Maisie was thinking about making some kind of uncanny creatures in a kind of charcoal sort of drawing way. And yeah, she kind of came up with a range with them. And then we kind of, as a back and forth, I tried doing some, made some uncanny creatures of my own. But they don't look like hers. They're different. They kind of look a bit more like my work, a bit more bold, a bit more yeah, a bit stranger again. Maisie was kind of writing written and visual poems and seeing what would come out with the images as well. Picture containing light, set, dark, distance. Kind of coming up with these kind of atmospheric pieces of work to do with light. And I noticed, for me, the other day, I'm not really working in a kind of poetic way. I noticed the other day that on my iPhone, these little experiments with waxy, roboty people have sort of superseded most people in my life. So, yeah, I've been doing quite a lot of them. So what in our conversations together, we're thinking, can we be illustrating with words? Is that something that we can do? Is it something that is it something that we want to do? Is it something that we can do? Is it something worth thinking about at the moment in time, illustrating with words? This is so embarrassing, but I'm going to say it anyway. So according to Gannon and Fashion, in a 2021 text, Illustration Research Methods, the way in which we conduct practice can be illustrative. They discuss the complex processes and illustration-specific behaviours and engagement. So the way in which we conduct illustration practice can be illustrative, not just the tools we use. So we were having in our conversations that maybe we can argue that to illustrate is a way of being rather than necessarily the method of making images. This is a kind of joint thing that we were thinking about. So the role of the illustrator is not simply to create imagery. Our role is to illuminate, to elucidate, and to add clarity, in a sense, to translate an idea, to make it more accessible, more easily read and understood. Illustration is becoming a discipline governed not by production methods, but by the illustrator's ability to reframe or make meaning. So the tools that you use to create with might be anything: pens, paper, paints, sure, but also a spirograph, an iPad, a piece of software, a drawing machine, an image generator, or words. That's quite interesting to us in a minute. Can you be using words to illustrate? And that takes us on to the idea of prompting and the connection between word prompts and illustration. So some of you might be familiar with these kind of setups, Inktober, for example, that give word prompts every year for every day for a month to get illustrators working, to kind of get a collective project going, but responding to particular words. And that's quite interesting when we're thinking about prompting using natural language, which is what you use to put into these AI image generators. So what is natural language prompting? It's described as prompts are the descriptions in natural language that act as an input for AI art generators. Yeah, so it's what you input. And this was a quote that I found, which I quite liked, which says, "What I love about prompting for me is it has something like magic. You have to know the right words for the spell." And it is a bit like that. You kind of conjure up, as a kind of magician kind of way, you conjure up a spell to input in to these things, and then they come out in, it's like a cauldron. You put things in, they come out. So for example, I'm going to show you an example from the DALL-E website. And so this is the text description, the prompt. It can be an astronaut riding a horse in a photorealistic style, but it could be in the style of Andy Warhol, or there's a pencil drawing. And so the text prompt that you give affects the output. Teddy bears, mixing sparkling chemicals as mad scientists, or shopping for groceries in the style of a Yukio, as one-line drawing from ancient Egypt. So this is another example of something that I was thinking about. I was thinking about it was a test, an experiment really, to see if I could get an image that I was thinking about through DALL-E directly. So I was thinking about pebbles on a beach, but I wanted to kind of see it from above. So the text prompt that I input was a close-up photograph of a top-down viewpoint of opal-coloured pebbles on the beach, and it did kind of respond in the way that I was thinking. But someone says, how do they still look somehow wrong? They do look wrong. It's not real. It's not photograph. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, has anybody used AI text image generation? Let's go back to this. If you've still got your phones up, has anybody used it? Lovely. Okay, well, shall we still do an experiment anyway? This was different with the students who hadn't used it, but maybe let's do it anyway. So what we'll do is we'll just have a little experiment. So I'm going to ask you now to do something. So we're going to use crayon.com. So here's a quick interactive experiment for you to participate in. Step 1, get out your phones and go to crayon.com. And step 2, type in the prompt, a self-portrait of an AI. Now I'd like you to kind of change those words or text the prompt input in whichever way you like. It could be in kind of a beautiful self-portrait. It could be an angry self-portrait of a nervous AI, whichever we want. And then let's upload them to this Padlet on the phones as well. And then maybe towards the end, we can have a look at them and discuss. I'll just give you a few minutes to do that. I'll do it too. Just thinking it won't be great for the recording, but for those of you who are listening in the future, you can play along as well. Go to crayon.com, and I guess I'll leave the Padlet up there as well, so we can see it in the future. as you might be seeing as you're doing your Crayon text generation, Crayon was one of the ones that was quite early. I think they called it DALL-E Mini to begin with, and they decided to commercialize it very quickly. And as soon as it became popular, there was adverts all over it very quickly, which I find quite interesting as well.
Matt, do you have a separate URL for the Padlet board? Because I think some people can't use the QR codes. Is there a separate link?
Fun. In fact, I'll copy it into the Teams. Oh, Stephanie's here. Hello, Stephanie.
Perfect, thank you.
As you're doing that, I'll just quickly show you some of the things that we were doing with the LCC group. So you can see the range of really kind of strange portraits they're putting in. Okay. So as you're doing that, I'll just continue, I think. It's one of Maisie's portraits. Okay, yeah, let's continue, and you can be doing that, and we'll have a look at them towards the end. But so okay, we've had a look at how. We've had a look at some of the interesting things about this technology and this way of making work. And now you're having a chance to have a go. Most people have already, but some people hadn't in the tool that I did before. But it leads us on to also thinking about the ethical issues of this way of working. So I'm just going to quickly play you as you're still working on your uploading this little scene from Jurassic Park.
There's no reason. No, I want to hear the viewpoint. I really do. Yeah, don't you see the danger, John, inherent in what you're doing here? Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun. It's hardly appropriate to start hurling generalizations. If I may, I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You're going to sell it. Well, I don't think you're giving us our due credit.
Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, that they didn't stop to think if they should.
So preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think about whether they should. And I feel like this kind of thought is resonating around with people at the minute as well, that just because you can, just because the technology is available and so quick to do, should we be doing it? Or what are the considerations we need to make in working in this way? And yeah, the World Economic Forum published an article in October saying artificial intelligence image generators bring delight. We talked about them playing with them. We've talked about them being a kind of toy in a way, but also bring delight and concern. Here's a quote that says, just because images are created by AI, it doesn't mean it shouldn't be governed by ethical principles or abide by national laws and regulations, e.g. privacy laws, child protection laws, copyrights. Such a fast-moving technology that these aspects kind of have to catch up. There's a lot of things you need to be thinking of, or we need to be thinking about in terms of this technology and using it, is that there are lots of biases that are replicated in its training database. So it has racial biases, it brings up gender biases, stereotyping and prejudice come with it as well. And the companies are aware of it, or is it inherent to the systems? These are questions that we need to be thinking about. So this is a user talking about the Lensa app, which I don't know if anybody saw any of that. It was around Christmas, but lots of celebrities were using this Lensa AI app to generate kind of portraits of themselves. This user said, based on user reports, Lensa has a clear problem of implicit bias. The app has been lightening black skin, making users appear thinner, and generating hypersexualized and semi-nude results for many women against their consent, even though they were fully clothed in all of the selfies that they uploaded. So yeah, that's a concern and problematic aspect. And somebody else says, my experience with it was a lot darker than I expected. One of the biggest problems I found when using the app is that it tends to over-sexualize women's bodies. The app seemed to transpose typically East Asian facial features onto my face, which is obviously not okay. I'll just quickly show, I think I'm probably overrunning now, but I'll just quickly show you this video, which is from Heinz. And I think that they think this is a good thing. But see what you think. So yeah, I think Heinz think this is a great thing, that there's a ubiquity of their bottle shape to all of the AI image generations of ketchup. But I find that quite worrying. And the fact that they're invoking 2001: A Space Odyssey and the HAL AI, I don't know about that, but yeah. So if you were following along with this around Christmas and December, I felt like there was a kind of tipping point that happened at some point where people started to talk about it much more. The Society of Illustrators put out a statement saying that the Society of Illustrators celebrates the hard work and dedication that goes into each of the artist's creations. We oppose the commercial use of artificially manufactured images and will not allow AI into our annual competitions at all levels. AI was trained using copyrighted images. We will oppose any attempts to weaken copyright protections, as that is a cornerstone of the illustration community. and I've got a few different examples from Christoph Niemann. I kind of want to get to chatting to you guys, but anxieties are highest among graphic designers and commercial illustrators whose livelihood is connected to the ability to turn out content to client specifications. An illustration agency in New York supports original art over AI. This is Mitch Goldstein, a design educator in New York as well, kind of likening AR to theft or distorted, awkward garbage. It's in the middle Venn diagram of it. This is Sonny Ross illustration, says artwork by Sonny Ross. Hey, why don't you train an AI to eat my ass? So yeah, there was a big feeling. This is Toby Triumph. This wasn't drawn by an AI bot. There was a big kind of movement and feeling towards very anti-AI imagery. Some measured thinking by Jessica Hirsch, graphic designer, who's talking about AI is not going away. It can definitely be used as a tool for good in lots of ways, but it's a little hard for me to be optimistic about its impact on creative professions living in our extremely capitalistic society. The ideal future is AI does the grunt work for us, so we have more time to be creative. Yeah. And then Nick Knight, again, maybe thinking about it in a slightly different way, says the criticism I hear most about CGI art is it lacks humanity, that it has no soul, or it's just produced by a machine. Strangely, it reminds me of the criticism that I've read that was leveled at photography when it was first invented. My answer is always, then it's up to the artist to put soul in it. So that's a different way of thinking about it. What have we got? Okay, I'll just go for another couple of minutes. If the fear is that these machines will create satisfactory art, pretty pictures with modernist tones, then yes, that fear is valid. I understand why artists involved in commercial tasks would be concerned, he added. If the fear is that these machines will create satisfactory art, pretty pictures, sculptures with modernist tones, then yes, the fear is valid. I believe that kind of art will be automated in the next couple of years. That's Matt Dryhurst speaking there. So Maisie and I were thinking in reaction to these statements and this way of thinking and the things that we were interested in as we're having conversations about using these tools. So what skills do we have that are irreplaceable? What parts of our practice as artists involved in commercial tasks at points in time cannot be replicated by machine learning? There is assumption here that the only part of the illustrator's process is the literal generation of the outcome. If the illustrator is inseparable from the process, there is a unique thinking and breathing visual voice, identity or personality behind the illustrator, then how can we be replaced? And yeah, we found some kind of AI image making that we thought was not replicated, that had its own voice, that wasn't replicating a particular style necessarily. I won't go into it because I think gone on long enough. And Holly Hendon and Matt Dryhurst are creating an AI tool called Spawning, which is allowing artists to opt out of having their work using databases. And so thinking about using it as a tool, but kind of thinking about it in a orientating it into a way that's maybe in more control of the artist. So these things are being thought about. Spawning is creating new artworks from each training data corpus so that it's being in more control. Okay, so what are our next steps? Maisie and I are thinking about this as a research project. So we're thinking about, in a developing landscape where craft can be automated or is seemingly going to be automated in the next few years, what part does an illustrator's behavior or voice play in illustration practice, and how can we navigate these areas considering the ethical implications of the technology? Yeah, and that's it really. Thanks. I feel like I actually went on a bit too long, but yeah, there's kind of a lot there. Kate,
Thank you. Yeah, no, and not too long at all. Perfect.
No,
We've got about 15 minutes for questions and discussion. there was a question. Oh, stop sharing your
Stop
screen. I
sharing.
don't
Sorry,
want to
sorry,
see
sorry,
myself.
I'm
I don't
sorry
wanna see
for
myself.
everybody. I started off really nervously on that talk. I haven't done this for a while on Teams, and I started off nervously, but I got around there in the end. Anyway, so let's have a conversation about it, and let's look at your work.
So there's a question in the chat from let me just scroll up. Jahal, could AI be used to produce comics or sequential graphic narratives? Do you have any insight into that? Is that something you've come across?
I've seen it. I can't remember the artist, but yeah, there's something on Cartoon Brew where yeah, I think it is as well. You can set it up. So I haven't got the kind of machine capability to do this in a minute. I'm hoping that I might be able to in the future. But there's a way that you can download a program to use, and you can I think it says in the beginning you can have a character or have an image that you can use in different scenarios, so it recognizes it and can put it into a more sequential way of working. So yeah, I think you can, and I'd like to see that. I've thought about it. Yeah, what do you think? What's that question?
Hang on, let me just, I don't know if the Jahal, would you like to add anything or ask a follow-up question? Please feel free to unmic and do so if you would like to do that. If anyone else has a question, then please unmic, shout, or raise your hand. Okay. That participant is in the library and can't speak at the moment, so that's fine. An interesting question.
I don't see why sequential narratives wouldn't be doable in this way. I think the only thing getting in the way of that is the randomization that comes if you're doing it in isolated ways. There's a randomized output that it gives, but yeah.
It's interesting. The first image you showed, the in Walmart looking for his mum, was it Thanos? That almost looked like a story.
It
I mean,
does,
I'm assuming it
doesn't
wasn't. I assume it was just the different images that it generated. Is that right?
Yeah, that's in Crayon. It gives you, you put in the input and it gives you a range of outputs. So it kind of gives you a selection to take from.
Yeah, but it's almost like I wanted to see that as a story, I wanted to follow the story through and see if there was something like the kind of urge to find a narrative in a sequence of pictures. But,
yeah, and you kind of do read into, you kind of read the narrative in that way. Him looking around Walmart. Rachel's got some. She's got some examples here.
I think there's been a few, but they are like a human person has written the story and then they are writing in prompts to make each of the images, rather than the whole putting in a prompt and then it delivering a whole narrative.
Yeah, I don't know whether that, would that be interesting to do, kind of set up a story using ChatGPT and using image making almost together, so you're generating a prompt story and then use it. That might be interesting. It's not something I've tried yet, but yeah.
And as you say, these things, particularly over the last few months, have just come into huge consciousness and are developing really quickly. So perhaps it's something that's not far down the line if it's not already easily achievable.
Well, like I said, it was very strange to hear my dad come to talk to me about it as well.
Well, yeah, because the conversation I had with you a few months ago was the first time I've heard of it, but it was almost like straight after that, almost every conversation I had with somebody was AI was being mentioned. It's certainly a very hot topic at the kind of recent research meetings that I've been at. Okay, any other questions or comments, or we can look at, if you want to look at the submissions. I was interested in when you said that you and your collaborator both generated your ghosts and they had a different style about them. Did you kind of backwards engineer that at all? Did you look at what prompts you put in and maybe what the sort of linguistic differences might be that led to those? I'd be really interested in that kind of.
We didn't look at the prompts because that was before we sort of started to record it. Now we are recording them as we go along, because it was, I was just kind of saving them. But I think the conclusions that we were starting to come to is that the images that we were choosing out of the range, because if you generate 100 and you choose 5, for example, you're choosing the ones that have a kind of you have an aesthetic or
resonance with you. Yeah.
please you in some way. So you're going to choose ones that maybe would replicate the kind of way that you work or the way you think visually anyway.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that actually, and that there's 2 input points, aren't there? There's the prompt that you put in, but then there's also the choice that you make of the images. And that, yeah, that was another one of my questions about how much of a role that plays in it. I think
it's huge. I think
yeah.
If you can generate 1,000 images in a day, then it reminds me of like David Shrigley's just sitting and drawing all day and maybe coming up with one drawing that he'll keep and throw the rest away. But those ones that you do keep are the ones that maybe there's a spark of something which will inform the narrative or inform I don't know. Yeah.
Rachel? Oh, sorry. Rachel's got a hand up. There's some comments in the chat, but I haven't seen any questions yet. So I'll go to the hand up first, Rachel.
I was just going to ask about your thoughts. I guess what you were intimating was that what this might do for illustration as a profession is kind of heighten the other abilities of illustrators other than just image makers. And I think those perhaps have not been so visual, for want of a better word. So, for example, illustrators have always rewritten briefs that they've been given. So I think when you're given a brief by a client and then you're like, I don't think that that's actually what they mean. I think if I put it like this, then that makes much more sense to me. And so we've always had the capacity to tell stories and to do all those other things, to be visual editors, to be art directors, to all those other kind of, as well as things to do with very acute sense of representation and empathy and all of those other kind of soft skills. Perhaps it will make those, if we're looking at it in a kind of positive way, perhaps it will help us articulate those better so they can be applied in different settings beyond that just of kind of image production. I don't know what your thoughts are around.
I know we've had conversations, Rachel. I remember when I first started about how talking with students about the value of the process, of the research process, of the ideation and developing ideas. It's not removed from, but kind of as a distinct thing to rushing towards the outcome or rushing towards a finished piece of illustration, and kind of asking students to slow down a bit and recognize what the thinking is and what the value of that thinking process and illustrative practice in the process. And I remember talking to students like saying, well, what if you couldn't do what if we stopped the process here and you couldn't go forward with the final illustration? What would you think about what you've done so far in the development process of your work? What value can you extract, or what value can you make meaning of from there? So it can't, because I don't know about you, but I've done some in my time as illustrator. I did a lot of work for like Oxford University Press and like kind of educational books, where it was the brief was, we need these images, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it was so boring. And I kind of took on the work because it was work, but I always thought, like, you don't really need me to do this. I'm not bringing a huge amount of value to in the things that I do to this. So if that range of work is then automated, I don't know, maybe, like you say, it might be a bit of a sea change in thinking about what illustrators, the potential of what they do is, rather than try to think of one that I might have done like a shoe on a box, which that was something I think I did, or like a shoe on a box to illustrate on, which wasn't particularly interesting for me to draw. I must admit.
Sorry, my phone was pinging. while you were talking. Yeah, I think it also, and the work that I've seen students do recently with it when they've been playing around with it, also it kind of enables that those don't become the finished images. Like they then use those to then like play around with them in Photoshop and or do other things with them. They're almost using it as a tool rather than as a kind of final production technique. Like then, I mean, maybe the technology will get to that point, but they're almost using it as a way of kind of creating visual ideas rather than being like create like the chat, like what's it called, Chat GTP is using for essays. They're using it as a kind of way of just creating kind of interesting images that they then can do other things to later on, rather than completely final.
I think so, because like the least interesting application of any of this is the kind of sci-fi fantasy stuff you see people making on Midjourney. That's kind of like a world building thing with, you know, astronauts and space, and it looks very polished, but it doesn't seem to be much to it, and it's kind of impressive enough to visually, but it reminds me of kind of, you know, I like it, but sci-fi airbrush paintings from the 1970s on album covers from rock bands, which, you know, I do like, but it sort of reminds me a little bit of that. But I think because of the openness of the tool, there's people who there's good things about this as well, who maybe don't have that kind of what did we call it, like illustration knowledge, or like maybe breadth of artistic understanding, are also creating images as well, which is a whole kind of different thing as well. But yeah.
Fantastic. We've got 5 more minutes. We've got a hand up. Is it Ed?
Hello. Oh yeah, it is
Hi.
indeed. I'm teaching on the interior design course, so my interest in this is kind of I guess ideation, as you were talking about, inspiration in terms of architecture and form. And I've been researching into it, and I see what you mean. You get into this place where you can just churn out loads of pretty images, and then you go, and now what? And there's lots of people out there just got tons of pretty images, and they keep spewing them out, and they get lots of likes on social media, but you feel like that will kind of pass. It's just a novelty, right? So I'm starting to think about how can we kind of practically apply this, and I see a lot of people starting to try to go from the AI and then just turn that into a model. I'm starting to think about the other way around. So you create some content and then you kind of co-collab with the AI to try and develop it. I just wondered if you've done anything like that so far.
I haven't, but it's interesting, isn't it, to think about the reverse engineering in a way that it was sort of first developed, in the kind of recognition of visual elements was then re-engineered to churn out an output. I've seen prototyping in different ways. People use it kind of to prototype more kind of video games, or even what is it, like the wireframing for websites, for example. I think I've seen some, I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm sure I've seen that you give, and I've used is it Chat GPT or Chat, I don't know, but I could have shown a little bit of this, but you can ask that to generate code for something. Have you seen that? And so you can generate code for a website, and then just in a minute you've got a website. I think, what did I do? Automated something that produced or gave you a random one of Brian Eno's oblique strategies. I just did it as a test in like 5 minutes, but that seems really interesting, to kind of a collaboration with a tool. I've been marking, I've had Chat GTP up to calculate the percentage of the weighting systems. So if element 1 is 80 and element 2 is 20%, if element 1 is 78 and element 2 is 56, what is it? And I can do it on a calculator. You can do it super easy on a calculator, but I just type it in, and what's nice is that you can iterate on it. And so I'll ask it a question and then say, how about this, or how about that? It remembers what you're saying. So I think in the way that you're talking about kind of having a collaboration, that back and forth might be important. But yeah, that's really cool to, yeah.
Yeah, because come to think about it, if you're just churning out stuff from Midjourney or Stable Diffusion continually, like the base, I don't know how to describe it, the pedigree, the bank of whatever you've got is not really expanding. Like, I don't know, I think it'll end up just kind of making copies of copies of copies of copies, and you'll end up kind of this massive funnel where culture and everything starts to come towards them.
I love that you say that, because I had that exact thought as I was waiting for 1 o'clock to turn around, and I remembered a conversation that I had with Lizzie Carpenter. I remember who it was, in the library, in the old library space at Kingston in 2005 and 2006, and we were looking at Google Images, which I think was fairly, I don't know, it can't be new, but it was a fairly new thing to us. And we were looking at an image of a giraffe, and she said something like, "But Matt, like, if everybody is searching for an image of a giraffe, is now going to one of these 5 images of a giraffe in Google, then all drawings of giraffes are going to look the same in 10 years." And I don't think that's happened. I don't have any evidence for or against, but but things move on quite quickly. Yeah, but I love that you said, because I think that's kind of anti what anybody wants, a kind of homogenization of resources.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thanks for all the questions. It's just gone 2 o'clock, so we should wrap up and let people go off to their next appointments and meetings. Let's all thank Matt, virtually or physically or in the chat. And